Saudi Arabia mobilises thousands of troops to try and quell rising dissent in the kingdom. Protesters have called for a day of rage and are using social network sites to rally protesters. But even as King Abdullah announces billions of dollars in social reforms, is this going to be enough to stave off a revolution? And is the House of Saud really listening to the growing voices of discontent? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Darren Jordan. Saudi Arabia is drafting thousands of security personnel in an attempt to crush a growing revolt in the kingdom. Meanwhile, Saudi activists have called for a day of rage and are using social networking sites like Facebook to mobilise support. Although it's difficult to estimate how many Saudis could take part in protests, there are three main population centres in the vast Arabian Peninsula state where demonstrations could emerge. The capital Riyadh, with a population of more than 4 million. The main port city of Jeddah, with a population of more than 2 million. And the Shia Muslim areas of the eastern province, which sits on much of the vast reserves of oil in the kingdom. So let's take a look at some of the main demands of the protesters. They're calling for political reform. They want the Consultative Council to be elected rather than appointed. Setting up a constitutional monarchy, a demand that led to the arrest of activists in 2003 and 2004. And they want political prisoners, mainly Shias, to be released. And the Shia minority want equal social and political rights. Well, in an attempt to avoid unrest, King Abdullah unveiled a massive social welfare package worth billions of dollars. But many critics see this as bribery, a way perhaps to buy people's silence. So what exactly is the king offering? Well, the package includes $37 billion worth of extra benefits, targeting education and job creation. He's given all state employees a 15% pay rise. And there'll be an increase in the cash available for Saudi housing loans. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by our guests from London, Abdulaziz Al-Khamis, a campaigner for Saudi Human Rights Centre. Also from London, Mai Yamani, author of a book, Changed Identities, the Challenge of the New Generation in Saudi Arabia. And joining us on the phone from Jeddah, Khalid Al-Maina, Editor-in-Chief of the English language Daily Arab News. Welcome to the programme. Mai Yamani in London, let me start with you, if I may. This is Saudi Arabia's worst nightmare, isn't it? I mean, the arrival of the new Arab awakening, as they're calling it, and insurrection in the kingdom. How worried is the House of Saud about the unrest across the region and right on its doorstep?
The wave of revolutions that has come in the region, and since the awakening in Tunis at the beginning of this year, obviously has shaken the Al Saud rulers to the core, because they have usually used their methods, which are oil money, to bribe the population, as we have seen last month when the king offered or promised $37 billion, in other words, to quieten the people. And we usually see the use of force and the security forces crushing the demonstrations. We know that in Saudi Arabia, demonstrations are illegal, punishable by imprisonment and flogging. And there has been a reminder to do this. The problem now is that whether it's the use of the sword is limited and dull and outdated. It's not going to meet the demands on the new challenges that we are facing today.
Okay.
The challenges from Twitter and from they have not really grasped the need to have reform, to have real constitution, and to have the people are asking for dignity and for constitutional monarchy now.
Okay, let's put that point to Khalid Al-Maina. He's on the phone from Jeddah. Khalid Al-Maina, how worried is Saudi Arabia over the growing dissent in the country and the prospect of these uprisings?
Well, I think I would agree that there is an Arab awakening. I would agree that young people in the world, in the Arab world, are becoming restless. We are part of the Arab world. I see things changing. I see since January 25th, 25, a new buzz all over the Arab world. And as I said, Saudi Arabia is part of the Arab world. Young people now talk openly of, trying to be part of a decision-making process. Whatever level it is, their goals are different, their visions are different. And they're not even listening. In my own family, young people don't listen to me anymore. So I think there is a change all around. And it's important that those people who oversee the affairs of the states in the Arab world, including the Gulf and in Saudi Arabia, realize that there is a new constituency out down there. And these people should be listened to and their voices should be heard.
Abdulaziz Al-Khamis, is that correct? Young people want to be part of this democratic decision-making process. I mean, more than 17,000 people have already backed a call on Facebook to hold 2 demonstrations this month. How big is the problem for the House of Saud?
Yes, it's true. And what we observe in the demands on Facebook or on Twitter and other websites, they asking for change in the way how the Al Saud ruling the country. The demand is concentrate on the root out the corruption, and achieve the justice and equality, equitable distribution of wealth, and people wanted to participate and share the power and to have a self determination through elected Shura Council. They have a constitutional kingdom and whole chapter to the authorities, modernization of the state and its institutions, and to have a freedom, media freedom and other things. I think the new generation have demand is with the new demands. The problem is the government is facing all of these demands by the old tools, and it will not work. They need a revolutionary way of thinking inside the Al Saud family, not only in the government.
Okay, all right. Let's bring in back Maya Mani in London to open this out a little bit. Maya Mani, you talked about the Arab awakening. I want to just raise the issue, if I can, of contagion, because that's quite important, isn't it? I mean, there are reports that King Abdullah told the Bahraini authorities next door that if they don't crush their own Shia revolt, his forces will. How much of a threat is the dissent in Bahrain to the House of Saud, do you think?
The dissent in Bahrain is a real threat to the Saudi monarchy, basically, as we know, because of the Shia in the eastern province, who are related to the Shia Bahraini, and they are around the border. Now, this has been a serious problem for the Al Saud, as in they had continued the politics of discrimination, severe discrimination against the Shia, who have been asking for reform. And if there is trouble in Bahrain or in, they're tied by the umbilical cord, if there is trouble in Saudi Arabia Eastern Province, then it can expand. There are no more borders. The borders are open. Borders of ideas are open. Saudi Arabia is also in the south, has Yemen. And Yemen, again, there are the movements of the people, the tribes, the ideas. So that's another threat down the south. So the ruling family in Saudi Arabia are faced with the outside influence and this upheaval that is taking place in the region. But what they have not yet done is really embark on serious reform. From 2003, when the reformers have asked for, and academics and professionals for, constitutional monarchy, they were jailed. So, as we have seen in other countries, if they do not communicate with the with the middle class, the educated middle class, and have dialogue with them, then we have seen that today there are more serious demands and that are dangerous and threatening for the survival of the regime.
Okay, so they ignore those voices at their peril, I guess. Let's bring in back Khalid Al-Maina on the phone from Jeddah. Khalid, King Abdullah has been accused perhaps of misjudged bribery in an attempt to avoid unrest. He unveiled this $36 billion package of social reforms. Is that going to work, do you think?
Well, I think any reform will work. I don't think so that at the press of a button you come up with that kind of plan. I heard from the sources in the offing. I'm not an advocate of anyone, but I'd just like to point out one thing which was said regarding King Abdullah telling the Bahrainis that they don't take care of the Shia problem. I think the protests in Bahrain are mainly also non-sectarian, and the Shia are 70%, and they have valid points. But I would not like to focus this on the Shia Sunni thing because it's going to cause great division. Remember that 44% of Saddam's pilots and his top officers were Shias in the fight against Iran. They didn't go on the other side. I would think these are genuine aspirations by all people, no matter what sects or ideology they belong. People are seeing this awakening in the Arab world. People would like to be others. I asked some young Saudis yesterday, what would you like to be? They say you would like to be the young of Singapore and Japan, and you would like to have a level playing field. Now, having said that, I don't want to narrow it into Shia or Sunni because it defeats the purpose.
All right, well, let's bring in back Abdulaziz Al-Khamis. Abdulaziz Al-Khamis, many intellectuals in Saudi Arabia are warning that big financial gestures just won't work and that the king, as you said earlier, must listen to the voices of disenfranchised young people. Is the king going to listen this time round, do you think?
Until now, I didn't see any signs of listening to the new demands. We just heard a lot of wishes, our promises, but it's nothing happened until now. What we observe, really, we found the Saudi government using the old tools, the religious establishment, fatwas against demonstrations, our using forces in the Eastern Province and in Riyadh. Other area, they try to promise them with the new financial helps, like in Jeddah, and big projects. But the truth is, there is no logic way to face the demands, especially demands of freedom. It's not only money matter. Other things is not only Shia problem, our mainly Shia problem in Saudi Arabia. It's nation problem. It's a problem of reform. It's a problem of bring justice and equitably to people. And the problem is the Saudi government. It's not working or not participate in the same or to face in a right situation the new demands, especially from newer generations. There is a lot of unemployment. There is people, and there is a lot of problems in schools and even in the health sector. Even the king and his family, they go to have a health operations outside the kingdom. The problem is it's a whole system need to change and to reform.
Okay, Maya Mani, let me bring you back in here because Abdulaziz Al-Khamis raises a very interesting point. It's not just the issue of discontent among the Shia populace. I mean, there are two sides to this coin. The Shias say they've been sidelined as a minority, but very importantly, there are young Sunnis who also feel disenfranchised in the kingdom. Which of these do you think is the greater threat to the House of Saud?
The Shia, and one thing that we have missed here is the importance of oil, as Saudi Arabia sits on 1/5 of the known oil reserves in the world, and the only oil-rich area in the Eastern Province. The Shia there are a majority, and therefore they have been more, they feel this economic marginalization and discrimination more. Now we have, I think, in all the movements that we have seen across, the Arab countries or the revolutions. We think that they are more about the individual needs for dignity, and that the sectarian divisions, Sunni, Shia, or as we saw in Egypt, Christian or Muslim, really are secondary. So if we are looking at Saudi Arabia today, the most important Arab country today, after the changes in Egypt, of course, you have Saudi Arabia, that is the oil-rich country, and that is also the cradle of Islam. Mecca and Medina are in Saudi Arabia. And real reform will make a much better, a more modern system and more tolerance.
Let's put that point, if we can, to Khalid Al-Maina in terms of where he thinks the political threat is coming from. Khalid Al-Maina in Jeddah, where do you see that threat coming from? I mean, is the House of Saud more worried about young Sunni discontent than the Shia who say that they've been sidelined politically? Where do you in Jeddah see that threat coming from?
Well, I don't think so. As I said before, I mean, we're trying to sort of divide it into Shia and Sunni effort. I would think a main threat to Saudi and other countries in the region also is terrorism. We overlooked that fact that there are extremists, and these extremists are those who have taken up arms, tried to blow up people. I would rather focus on these people with extreme ideas and try to work on these young people rather than sort of pinpoint whether Shias or Sunnis. I think this cuts across most, and you find out to which sects the extremists belong, and you will find out that we are sort of pointing the finger at the wrong place.
Abdulaziz Al-Khamis, Maya Yamani raised a very important point about the strategic importance of Saudi Arabia in all of this. I mean, it sits, as she said, on vast oil reserves. It's the cradle of Islam, and many say it's a counterbalance to Iran in the region. How will the US, President Obama, be looking in on things from Washington? How worried will Obama and the administration be at what they're seeing happen now in terms of the region, but also the key ally, their key ally in the region, Saudi Arabia?
Before I answer this question, let me back to what my colleague, Mr. Khalid Al-Maina, talked about terrorism as the real threat to the Saudi Arabia. Terrorism came to the scene because the lack of freedom, and the young generation in Saudi Arabia, they find themselves between to be loyal to the government or to go to Al-Qaeda or Bin Laden theories. This is the problem, is the Saudis, the lack of freedom, the lack of the other parties, political organizations, our sharing power with Al Saud, make people going to the dark side of the Saudi political system. Is the religious, people like Bin Laden, our organizations like Al-Qaeda. That's why we be happy to see the Egyptians and Tunisians, they away from the religious theories or religious political fanatical theories. They come to discover the freedom is to have your dignity, you have a country for you, and you share the power. This is what the new generation in Saudi Arabia look after. If they make pressure on them and they not allow them to participate or demonstrate or have their rights, political rights, they will go back to the Bin Laden and the other Islamic fundamentalism groups. The other thing, the Americans think about stability in Saudi Arabia. They think they need a strong system in Saudi Arabia, strong regime. They don't care who rules Saudi Arabia. Is it king or president? They care about their benefits, especially about oil. The stability of Saudi Arabia, it will guarantee there is oil flow to their profits and for their factories. This is what they think about our country. They don't think about people. They think about money and oil.
All right. Well, I want to put that point to Khalid Al-Maina in Jeddah. Khalid, how worried do you think Washington will be about what's happening in Saudi Arabia? The US will say, of course, it supports democracy. But let me ask you, will these strategic imperatives take precedence here? I mean, Washington, as Abdulaziz Al-Khamis says, Washington needs a stable oil supply, and Saudi Arabia is, of course, a regional counter to Iran.
Well, I see we do not want to be used by anyone, whether it's the United States or anyone else. Saudi Arabia is a sovereign country. Yes, we have issues that have to be dealt with seriously from within. As I said, young people, bureaucracy, unemployment, healthcare. But I do not like to be sort of patronized by the Americans and be seen either as a supplier of oil. With America, while we are friends, there are times I think we should disagree. We want friends and not masters. So Washington is worried, but they're worried from their own point of view, as they were worried in Cairo when things were happening, because they were worried what Israel is going to happen and whether the Camp David treaty would be cancelled or not. So I think basically in the final analysis, it has come down to us, the people of Saudi Arabia, the government, and those in power. They have to understand that we have to have a complete overhaul in our view, in our thoughts, and try to recognize, because if we don't recognize that there are issues and problems, we're not going to solve them. So I'm not much concerned with what Washington thinks. Yes, going back to your question, I think they are worried, but from their own perspective.
Mayamani, to many observers looking in, this unrest in Saudi Arabia presents a big worry, perhaps.
To the America.
Well, hang on. I'm just saying that the unrest perhaps presents a big problem for Obama and the U.S. administration. I mean, Saudi Arabia is a key ally. It's a big oil producer, as you say. But Obama presumably will be hesitant to make open calls to support the protesters, won't he?
When we saw the Bahraini security forces, of course, they used force against the people. We know that no matter how much the Obama administration want to see a stable Bahrain, they still had to condemn the use of force. Basically, America is, I'm sure the Obama administration are very worried about their ally, Saudi Arabia. They already lost one ally in Egypt, Mubarak, and this is their most important ally. The only language they can use now is pressure for reform rather than just advice for reform. But the truth is the Obama administration and this American empire is overstretched. They already have the problems from Afghanistan and still in Iraq. And there is nothing they can do to help the Saudi rulers from their own people.
Okay.
In the days they could help them from Saddam Hussein, protect them from outside threats, but now it's the time for the Saudi monarchs to deal with their own people and find a solution so that they can survive this.
Okay, Abdulaziz Al-Khamis, let's get a final thought from you before we go. I mean, was this a time bomb waiting to go off? I mean, is the Saudi regime in denial about what its people really want? Just briefly.
No, I think there is a time for the Saudi regime to reform itself, and I think there is a lot of people, they were especially inside the ruling family, they know exactly there is a problems and there is needing for reform themselves and their regime, and they saw what happened in Egypt and Tunisia and Libya. The problem is the Saudi people, they not most of them, they will demonstrate because there is religious fatwas against demonstration, and most of Saudis is religious. The other thing, they don't want to be the same like Libya. Saudi Arabia is same like Libya because tribes, oil, and weak army. And this is the problem that will face Saudi Arabia in the future if there is a unstable situation.
Okay, let's get a final thought from Khalid Al-Maina on the phone in Jeddah. Khalid, can the Saudi royals preserve their throne, do you think? Can they embark on the reforms that we've been talking about today?
Well, I think yes. I mean, personally, and as I said to you, the royal family is the glue, or the government, or the king is the glue. Now, you have to remember also that King Abdullah, on a personal level, is very much loved, and I say it very openly. He's loved by the people. He would like to do a few things, but then at the same time, you have to systemize what one is doing. I think they will hold. I think people would understand there's a lot at stake. The country, I mean, is a large country with different people, even the cultures and the subcultures of people, for instance, from Jeddah or Qasim or the north and the south are so different. You need a pillar, but at the same time, you need a pillar that has to be re-anointed. You need one that really should stand. And also, the idea is to listen to people. And I wish the government would listen more. because by doing that, you come to terms for something that's going to happen in the coming few years.
OK, we have to leave it there. Thanks to our guests, Abdulaziz Al-Khamis, Mai Yamani and Khalid Al-Maina on the phone. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We, of course, welcome your comments and your suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. From the whole team here, goodbye for now.